When Arjun opened the small envelope that morning, he had no idea it would change his entire life. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded carefully, smelling faintly of sandalwood. It was his parents' handwriting, shaky and desperate. "Arjun," it read, "you have to marry this girl. Her family insists it will help our debts. Please don't say no. Her name is Meera." He read it again and again, his heart sinking. Marry. To a stranger. Arjun was a humble village schoolteacher. His salary barely covered his mother's medicines and his younger brother's college fees. For years, he'd lived simply, teaching under the banyan tree, his chalk-stained hands and patient voice guiding children who dreamed of better futures. He believed love should come naturally, not through deals or pity. But that letter, it felt like a chain he couldn't break. When he met Meera for the first time, she sat quietly in a white salwar, her long black hair falling over her shoulders. Her eyes were deep, unreadable. But she didn't speak. Not a word. Her mother leaned forward awkwardly and whispered, "Meera is deaf. She was born that way." The words struck him harder than he expected. Deaf. He looked at Meera again, this time with guilt. She met his gaze and gave a small smile, as if to say, "It's okay." Arjun's father cleared his throat. "They've agreed to cover our debts, son. In return, you must marry her." He wanted to scream, to protest that marriage wasn't a transaction. But when he saw his mother's teary eyes, and the tired, pleading faces of his family, he couldn't say no. The marriage that felt like a burden. Their wedding was simple. No music, no laughter, just quiet rituals. Meera watched his lips as he spoke his vows, nodding slowly, understanding pieces of it. Arjun tried to smile, but inside, he felt like a fraud. When they moved into his small rented house near the school, an uneasy silence filled the air. Meera would sit by the window in the mornings, sketching in her notebook. Arjun would leave early for school, teaching children who laughed freely, something he rarely did anymore. At night, he'd see her trying to cook or sweep, moving silently, gracefully, like a ghost in his house. He noticed her kindness, her patience, but he couldn't shake the thought that he was trapped in a marriage born out of pity. One day, as he graded papers, Meera brought him a plate of food. She touched his shoulder gently and smiled. Then, she pulled out a small notepad and wrote, "Are you happy?" Arjun froze. What could he say? He wrote back, "I don't know." She looked down, nodded slowly, and walked away. That night, she didn't eat. The first crack in his heart. Weeks passed. One afternoon, Arjun came home early and found Meera teaching a small group of children in the courtyard. She was using her hands, signs, gestures, expressions. The kids were laughing, copying her movements, trying to sign words. He stood there, stunned. She was teaching them how to communicate without words. When Meera noticed him, she waved shyly. One of the children, a boy with hearing aids, hugged her leg tightly before leaving. Arjun couldn't stop watching her. For the first time, he saw her differently, not as someone broken, but as someone incredibly strong. That evening, he picked up her notepad and wrote, "You're good with children." Her eyes lit up. She quickly wrote back, "They understand me better than most adults." They both smiled. It was the first real smile they shared. A hidden talent, a hidden world. As days turned into months, Meera and Arjun slowly began learning each other's language. He learned basic sign language. She read his lips more fluently. Their silent conversations became filled with laughter. Arjun began realizing that Meera was not fragile, she was vibrant, intelligent, and fiercely independent. One night, she showed him her drawings. He was stunned. They were breathtaking, scenes of rural life, women working in fields, children playing, even a detailed sketch of him teaching under the banyan tree. Every line spoke emotion. "You drew these?" he asked, forgetting she couldn't hear. She nodded, smiling proudly. A week later, he secretly submitted her sketches to a local art exhibition. When her collection won first prize, Meera cried when she found out, not because of the award, but because Arjun believed in her. The day everything changed. Just when their bond was deepening, tragedy struck. Arjun's school faced closure. Government funding was cut, and the small building was set to be demolished. His heart shattered. Teaching was all he had. He told Meera through tears, "I can't lose this place. The children, they have nowhere else." That night, Meera stayed awake, writing furiously in her notebook. The next morning, she packed a small bag and left without a word. Arjun panicked. He searched everywhere, the market, the temple, even the bus stand, but she was gone. Days passed. He barely slept, barely ate. He realized how deeply he missed her, how much he loved her silence, her smile, her presence. Then, after a week, a car pulled up in front of his house. Out stepped a tall man in a business suit, and behind him, Meera. Arjun ran to her, words tumbling out. "Where were you? I thought." Meera held up her hand and smiled. Then she turned to the man and signed something. The man nodded and spoke, "Mr. Arjun, I am Meera's father." Arjun froze. "Father?" "Yes," the man continued. "She is my only daughter. We kept our wealth hidden to find someone who would love her for who she is, not for what she has." Arjun's heart stopped. Billionaire's daughter. Her father smiled. "We know how you struggled. How you never treated her cruelly, even when you were unhappy. That's rare, son." Meera stepped closer, eyes glistening. She took her notepad and wrote, "I went to talk to my father. The school won't close. I bought it." Arjun stared at her, speechless. "You, what?" She nodded. "It's ours now. For the children." A love that spoke without words. From that day forward, everything changed. The small school was rebuilt with new classrooms and a playground. Meera designed murals on the walls, bright, colorful images of unity and learning. Together, they taught not only hearing children but also deaf students who had nowhere else to go. Arjun taught lessons of math and science, Meera taught art and sign language. Their love grew, not through words, but through shared purpose, quiet gestures, and deep understanding. But even success brought new challenges. People in the village began gossiping. "They say she's rich now," someone whispered. "He only stayed because of her money." When Arjun heard this, it stung deeply. He wanted to protect Meera from their words. But she was stronger than he thought. One day, during a village event, she stood before the crowd, wrote something on a board, and held it high. "He loved me when I had nothing. Now, together, we give everything." The crowd fell silent. Some clapped, others cried. Arjun just stood there, his eyes full of tears. Years later, the true gift. Years passed, and their school became one of the best in the district. They opened special programs for children with disabilities, providing education that many thought impossible in a small rural town. Arjun and Meera had grown older, but their bond only deepened. They didn't need words, they spoke with smiles, eyes, and hearts that understood silence better than any sound. One evening, as they sat under the banyan tree watching the sunset, Meera handed him a letter. It read, "You once said you didn't know if you were happy. Now I want to ask again." He smiled, took her hand, and wrote beneath it, "I am the happiest man in the world." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat there, letting the golden light wrap around them like a blessing. The inspiring message: love is not always about grand gestures or perfect communication. Sometimes, it's about patience, the willingness to listen even in silence, to understand even without words. Arjun was forced into a marriage he never wanted. Meera was born into silence she never chose. Yet together, they built a world full of laughter, compassion, and soundless love. And though he never knew she was a billionaire's daughter, it didn't matter. Because in the end, the richest thing they ever shared wasn't money or fame. It was the unspoken connection that made two souls finally understand what true love really means. Moral of the story: never judge someone by what you see or what you hear, or in Meera's case, what you don't hear. The quietest people often have the loudest hearts, and love that begins in silence can echo forever.